My people, I'd say, who shaped me most would be my parents, Martin and Elsa Marty. My dad was a Lutheran minister, and he saw that as a responsibility to get involved in things. And both my mom and my dad were active in the civil rights movement, the anti-war movement, the anti-poverty movement. And they taught us values related to that. We suffered consequences at times during my junior high years. We weren't allowed to answer the phone because of hate calls over civil rights issues. We grew up in the Chicago area. But they brought us around. We went to all African-American churches at the time. There weren't desegregated churches back then. They taught us values, like respecting the inherent worth and dignity of every human being. They taught us to work hard and play fair. And they said when there's an injustice you see in society, it's your obligation to do something about it. And it's those values that have gotten me involved in politics. That's what I've done in politics for 24 years. That's why I spend so much time in the last few years on health care. Because I think we have to find a way to take care of everyone. In our Minnesota health plan, the plan I designed to do that, I don't care if somebody has another way to do it, but I haven't seen anyone else come up with a proposal. And I have gotten a third of the legislature to back it. And I'm running for governor because I think we have to make it happen. When I say that, I mean everybody would be covered, not some. Even with the public option in Washington, they say it'll cover 94% with insurance. But what about the other 6%? What about the immigrants? When in Washington, they're explicitly saying, undocumented people, we're not going to cover them. What about them? Aren't they equally important human beings? Aren't we supposed to take care of them as well? So my plan will take care of them. That's why I'm running, because I frankly think living out our vision is critically important in the policies we decide.
Margaret's faith and her morals have shaped her values, which are really easy to see in the way that she respects and cares for each Minnesotan as an individual and respects her colleagues at the legislature, we who represent a great number of individuals. Respect, unfortunately, is not something you always get from a politician. One of the ways you can see Margaret's values is to see what our caucus is concentrating on right now. We are concentrating on jobs. We are concentrating on health care for everyone, not leaving out the very, very poor or the folks who are working poor, and certainly not pitting the working poor against the very, very poor. You can see our values also in our concentration on early childhood education, because we understand what that means for children and opening the doors of opportunity for all our students, not limiting the opportunities, but keeping them open. And finally, I think you can see Margaret's values in her celebration of the diversity of folks in Minnesota.
Susan Gertner grew up in a modest family in the east side of St. Paul. Her dad, I know she's spoken a lot to me and to others about her dad, because her dad was a social worker who worked with less privileged people. And what he taught her and what Susan's mom taught her was that, and I got to look at the quote because this is something she told me herself. She said, "To whom much is given, much is expected." And even though she came from a modest background, she had the opportunity to get a good education, good public education. She had the opportunity as county attorney to be a leader. And so she looks to herself and she says, much is expected of me. And she wants to go to bat for people, work with people to make sure that they've got the opportunities that she had to good education, to good health care, to grow up in a family and a community that cares about people. And so that's what she brings to this. She's active in her Methodist church. She's done a lot of work in the hunger movement since she was a teenager. So that's the compassion that she will bring to being governor.
The person that's had the most influence on RT's spiritual life is his mom. She was widowed when RT was 10 years old, and she took over the running of the small family grocery store on Franklin Street in Minneapolis, putting herself and RT and his 2 other siblings through college. In church every Sunday, and she told him afterwards she was keeping the pew warm for him when he came back 15 years later, 20 years later. The way that faith influences RT's decision-making now is quite clear and quite strong. He believes that faith that is respectful of the diversity and of all traditions, faith traditions, and focuses on compassion and justice that is universal to all, works to bring people together. And he finds that when he works on the issues that he is most personally passionate about, which is affordable housing and education and reducing violence in the most violent-prone areas of the city and the state, and in working on health care, that people of faith always show up and always want to work with him. He has an incredibly strong moral compass. These are all economic issues and public policy issues, but they are also deeply moral and spiritual issues, and he speaks out of that passion.